Hi, this is Ms. Hottie from Olympian High School. I want to teach you about social change during the medieval period. First, you should know that it wasn't as simple as those who pray, those who fight, and those who work. Obviously, we're using the Traditions and Encounters textbook by Dr. Bentley. That's what my students use at Olympian High School. So this was a cute way of describing what society might have looked like. The medieval social commentators often use this cute formula to describe some basic truths about what society looked like. Those who pray included people like the priests and the bishops, people that were clergy in the Roman Catholic Church. Those who fight would be the lords and retainers, the knights, and those who work were supposed to be the peasants or cultivators. And while this is true to a degree, it hides some changes that are going to take place in European society in the post-classical period. So make sure that you don't just say, if someone asks you what was post-classical Europe like, you don't just say, oh, those who fight, those who pray, those who work, the three estates. No, this is overly simplistic. So, that is somewhat true, but there's some big changes. One big change that happened to the those who fight group, the lords, is that there's going to be a new code of how to act and how to behave, manners called chivalry. This was originally promoted by the Christian Church, the Roman Catholic Church, to try to get knights to stop fighting each other. And you can read about what the ritual was like in the book. But you should know that aristocratic women really loved this code for the way it promoted kindness and soft, gentle, tender manners towards women. And so they patronized or paid money and gave support to a group of, or a class of traveling poets, minstrels, and entertainers, collectively known as troubadours, who were very active in southern Spain and northern Italy, and who learned about chivalry and promoted ideas of love and romantic love, and from poets they heard from Muslim Spain. And as the Christians were, eventually you're going to learn about the Christians start reconquering Al-Andalus or Muslim Spain, they're going to encounter many more Muslims who are well-versed in love poetry and love songs. And so this is a beautiful way that the Christians and Muslims are interacting. We're obviously going to learn about some not as beautiful ways, some violent interactions between Muslims and Christians, but there's also this beautiful cultural interaction. I have a painting on my wall that my students gave me once, and it's if you can look at it, it's a picture that's also in your book of a Christian and a Muslim troubadour together playing the lute or the oud. And there's this beautiful mixture and the spread of love poetry because of interaction with the Muslims. So make sure you know about that. You should also know the name of Eleanor of Aquitaine. She's a famous woman of her time that patronized the troubadours. You should also know that cities are becoming larger and starting to demand more rights. So they wanted more freedoms, and the merchants in these cities wanted, for example, charters of incorporation. Sometimes they created leagues to give themselves more rights, like the Hanseatic League. You should also know about the guilds. Guilds are basically groups of people of the same occupation. So, for example, all the shoemakers or all the textile workers. And what they would try to do is enforce certain standards of production to make sure the quality of their goods was up to a certain level, and also prevent oversupply, making sure the price of their goods was enough to sustain their industry and to sustain them as workers. They also checked who could become part of their group, so there wouldn't be an overabundance or oversupply of a certain product, causing prices to decline and therefore potentially bankrupting them. They also had a social function in that people in the guilds supported each other. They kind of served as a soft social infrastructure. If someone got sick, they helped. If there was a funeral, they helped. They provided moral support. They had parties at banquet halls and hung out together. Their kids married each other. So there's a lot of social connections within the guilds. There is a big change for urban women, but not for countryside women. So we have to keep this distinction in mind. There's some change and there's some continuity. There's a continuity for women who were in the countryside, in the rural areas. They're going to continue to perform tasks like household chores, weaving, the care of domestic animals. But for people living in cities, women living in cities, they have a lot more opportunities, despite the fact that it's still a patriarchal society. Now they can work alongside men, doing a bunch of new occupations, or occupations that men were doing, like becoming a baker or a brewer, or even sometimes the more elite kind of occupation of being a physician or a pharmacist. And they were especially prominent within the textile field, so weaving, spinning, anything having to do with clothes. And they even had their own guilds and were able to join some guilds. So there were men and women guilds, so there were guilds that were mixed, and you also have some women-only guilds. And so as you can see, there are significant changes